There is only one place to start tonight, right here on the Hill. Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, set to be face-to-face for the first time.
We're going to defeat Comrade Kamala Harris, and we are going to win the White House, that gorgeous, beautiful White House. We're going to win it.
Are you ready to face Donald Trump?
Yes, I am. It's time to turn the page on the divisiveness.
In moments, I will share with you what I am hearing from both campaigns ahead of tonight's huge debate. And we are live in Philadelphia throughout the hour. So let's get right into it. On this big night in politics, welcome to Washington, the center of it all. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. And a live look right now at the National Constitution Center in the heart of Philadelphia. You can normally get into that building right there with a ticket under $20 to get into the museum, which honors the founding of our country. But tonight, no amount of money can get you onto the big stage as the 45th president of the United States, and the sitting vice president will try to punch their ticket right back to the White House. A live look inside the Philadelphia Convention Center, what is now known as the Spin Room, where after the debate, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's campaigns will try to make their pitch to reporters and to the public about why they say their candidate was the one who scored big. But before then, with 3 hours to go until the second, but really the first presidential debate, hello once again and welcome to The Hill on NewsNation. We have yet to see either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris today, but that will change later this hour as the vice president held her private debate hall walkthrough earlier this afternoon. Donald Trump is landing in Pennsylvania in about 30 minutes time, and when that happens, we will show it to you live. Tonight, here is what I'm hearing ahead of the debate. This is what both campaigns are telling me that their candidates will attempt to do this evening. Let's start with Trump. I am told he will relentlessly try to point Harris back to her record, with Trump trying to force the sitting vice president to explain, well, why haven't you done it already? Expect Trump, by the way, to bring up some of Harris's controversial old court cases that she oversaw as a prosecutor. Elsewhere in the past, the Trump campaign says this recent clip of the vice president, when she was asked about her changing policy positions, will come back front and center.
In 2020, I make very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
What made you change that position at the time?
Well, let's be clear. My values have not changed.
All right. Now, as for Vice President Harris, I'm told the word of the night will be future. You can expect the vice president to talk about turning the page, and she will point out what she sees as the chaos and division that surrounds and follows the former president. She will try to outline two totally different visions. As it was said to me this afternoon, it really is that simple. We'll see how it plays out. We will hear from both sides throughout the hour here on the Hill, but we begin tonight with Michael Whatley. He is, of course, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, joins us live here on the Hill once again. Michael, thanks for being back with us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good to be with you guys.
All right, so let's get to it. Donald Trump wants to highlight her past. Kamala Harris wants to talk about the future. I wonder why you think it's a smart strategy for him to talk to voters tonight, not about the future, but rather about the past.
Well, Donald Trump is going to talk about the future. What we're going to talk about is his vision for America and how he is going to help restore our southern border, rebuild our economy, and make sure that America is strong enough to protect our interests at home and abroad. This entire election cycle is going to come down to a question of strength versus weakness. And Kamala Harris is not presenting a platform, a vision on how to make America strong in any way, shape, or form. All she wants to do is attack Donald Trump, and we're going to be talking about the future and why she is not ready for prime time to be able to lead it.
The first policy position I just heard you talk about there is the border. Of course, we know, Michael, tomorrow's 9/11, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the country will honor and remember what happened on that day 23 years ago. But on Thursday, the former president then will be back out on the trail, and he will be in Arizona. Do you believe that it's the border that is Kamala Harris's weakness?
That is one of her weaknesses. It certainly is a very major weakness, as the borders are. Her administration took 94 executive actions to dismantle the most secure southern border in American history and invited 10 million plus illegal immigrants to come across that border. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are. We don't know what they're doing. But her own administration, her own FBI, has said that it presents a clear and present danger to America. Donald Trump shut down that border, had the most secure border in American history, and he'll have to do it again because she has opened it up.
Let me ask you, if that is what you view as one of her weaknesses, let's talk about one of Donald Trump's, because as it relates to women, he is down double digits. As it relates to the issue of abortion, he is down double digits as well. Here was Kamala Harris when she accepted the nomination at the Democratic National Convention. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Donald Trump handpicked members of the United States Supreme Court to take away reproductive freedom. And now he brags about it. In his words, quote, "I did it and I'm proud to have done it."
So when Kamala Harris tonight, potentially, Michael, looks at Donald Trump and says, "You are the reason for the overturning of Roe," what does he say?
Absolutely right. And it is very important for us to defederalize this issue and return it to the states. That's why it is really important for us to have this conversation and talk about sending this issue back to the states. But that's exactly where we're playing this issue. And I think it's important for everybody to understand that we're not going to have a national abortion discussion. It is back in the states where it belongs.
All right, let me ask you about, speaking of the states, because it's going to come down to this election will, many of the key swing states. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., we now know he is off the ballot in the state of North Carolina, which is what Republicans and RFK Jr. wanted. On the ballot, though, in the key swing state of Michigan, does he cost you several points in possibly Michigan?
No, I don't think so. I think that in every poll that we're seeing right now, there are fewer and fewer people who are voting other. This is going to be a race between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and there may be a few protest votes that we'll see out there. But the fact that RFK Jr. is out there campaigning actively for Donald Trump shows you that he is the change agent in this election cycle. The fact that we've got Elon Musk and Tulsi Gabbard, who are also on board, shows you that Donald Trump is the only candidate who's uniting across all spectrums politically right now, and he's the only candidate who's actually talking to every American voter and every American family to unite this country.
What is that? I heard you say other and protest vote. You see the numbers, I presume. What is that margin right now? I'll leave you with that. What is that margin right now that you believe that is actually up for grabs?
I think we're seeing less than a point or two in any given state that are going to be for other, including Cornel West and others. So, look, this is a vote that's going to happen right now between Kamala Harris and President Trump. Kamala Harris is going to double down on the failed policies of the last 4 years. She's going to double down on every policy that she has held dear over the course of her career. And Donald Trump is going to change this equation, and he's going to restore American greatness and American strength.
Michael Whatley, chairman of the Republican National Committee, once again here on the Hill. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You got it. All right, joining me here on the Hill throughout the hour, Nan Hayworth, former Republican Congresswoman from the state of New York. Scott Traynor, the man behind the numbers, data science director for Decision Desk HQ. Julia Manchester, national political reporter for the Hill. And Kurt Bardella, Democratic strategist, NewsNation contributor as well. Hello to you all. We got a thing going on tonight, don't we? That the country's talking about, the political world's talking about. Look, the last one was as consequential as they've ever been. It's like I said, it's the first debate, but it's really the second debate, right? But here we are again. Julia, I'm told, I sort of laid it out there at the top, that Donald Trump is basically going to make the argument, well, why haven't you done it already?
Right.
And Kamala Harris is going to talk about the future. What are you hearing?
So listening to that conversation with Michael Whatley, listening to obviously what we've heard from the Trump campaign, you know, it matches what a lot of Republicans have been telling me, that they want him to focus on policy. They want him to create this contrast with Kamala Harris. Were you better off 4 years ago prior to the coronavirus pandemic versus now? Talk about inflation, talk about the border, crime, etc. The problem, and really the unknown factor here, is can Donald Trump and will Donald Trump stay on message, or does he devolve and sort of go into these personal attacks?
We've had that conversation for 10 years.
10 years, exactly. And, you know, watching his past debates, sure, he's focused on policy. I think, you know, and I think there's obviously a lot of debate. He said some, you know, a number of falsehoods during the last debate, but he was more on message. He seemed to be a bit more even-keeled. But you know, judging by the attacks that have been coming out of him over the past few days, he seems fired up.
What'd you take away from Michael Whatley there, RNC?
I think they have a problem when they say that Donald Trump is the uniting figure in this race and pointed to RFK and Elon Musk as examples of that unification. When you look at what we're seeing from Republicans like Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Republicans, former Trump officials, Stephanie Grisham. You're looking, they have Scaramucci spinning for them at this debate.
The average American, though, doesn't know those names, I would think. And what happens tonight
when Dick Cheney is?
Dick Cheney, yes. But
they
what happens
don't like
tonight?
him either.
What happens when they say it? What happens when Trump says to her tonight, well, why did you do it?
Well, this is what I find fascinating. All of a sudden, we have made this decision that the vice president is the most powerful office in the land. That's like saying, hey, Donald, you didn't do any of these things. Mike Pence did them all. Mike Pence should take credit for everything you did. How would you feel if we said, Donald Trump, you did nothing. Mike Pence is the reason why your success has happened. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that president is the buck stops here, as Donald Trump has famously said, and all of a sudden decide that, well, Kamala Harris, on her watch, her administration, what are you talking about?
Let me ask you, though, chaos, division, that's the argument that she is going to make tonight. Look forward. Yeah, when she says you've been chaotic, you're divisive, we need to move past it, Donald Trump says what?
Look at the fact that, in fact, the scion of the most distinguished political family in the United States, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has chosen a unity party approach with President Trump. He didn't choose it with his own party's candidate, which he could have, because an increasing coalescence of Americans understand that if we're going to actually move forward and heal up and get better, we need to have a continent border, an emphasis on building the economy, on hiring Americans.
Democrats would say, take RFK Jr. He's yours.
They can say that, but in fact, he and Nicole Shanahan are becoming very powerful voices for uniting us across a lot of divides that have existed before.
So I wouldn't doubt Whatley there when he says 1% to 2% on the others. You're the man with the numbers. Was that your takeaway?
I was shocked he said that, right? Because if you watch Donald Trump,
you want to give me a high five for getting him to say that?
Exactly. That was great. We're going to look at that sound clip because I almost jumped out of my seat. Donald Trump, if you listen to him talk, he says every poll where it's close is wrong, and he's ahead by much further. That's what he says in his speeches. We have the chairman of the RNC coming out and saying it's a 1 or 2 point race, which it is.
He was saying the other vote, it could be decided by those 1 or 2.
I understand that, yeah. But he was saying, well, let's get it decided in the states. Let's look at it here. And that was the other interesting thing. The abortion thing. He said, let's have that decided in the states. Florida is looking to be about a 3 or 5 point race. That has an abortion referendum on the ballot, and that is proven to be a turnout thing.
By the way, we're asking the other side, those who support Kamala Harris, here later in the show. Packed hour still to come here on the Hill over the next 47 minutes as we take a live look at Philadelphia once again. We are joined by our Kelly Meyer, Mick Mulvaney here as well on how both candidates are being prepared at this moment. And then there's this.
I can't help but wonder, why didn't law enforcement officials arrest the shooter?
Why Melania Trump reappeared today with a very question of her own. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. We're back in 4 minutes. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Republicans here in Washington today put immigration and border security front and center ahead of tonight's debate. The House Judiciary Committee held a hearing on crimes allegedly committed by illegal immigrants. Republicans and family members of victims accused the vice president, Kamala Harris, of not appropriately securing the border. as she was asked in her role as vice president to oversee the root causes of migration.
The words that she has often spoken when it comes to defunding the police and ICE kin to the KKK is demoralizing to law enforcement and those trying to protect our country.
We are sitting in yet one more partisan hearing designed to divide us and to score political points before an election.
Democrats, as you heard there, defended the vice president, pointing to decreasing numbers, for example, of encounters along the southwest border since President Biden's executive actions went into effect this summer. The second hearing, by the way, focused on trying to ensure illegal immigrants don't vote in elections. Now, that's already against the law federally, but has become a key topic here in Washington for the House Speaker, Mike Johnson. Donald Trump talking about it today, by the way. Immigration, as you might know, is expected to be among the most contentious issues at the debate this evening. So I wanted to give you a look for a second here at sort of where that stands right now among the electorate. All right, these are the three big issues. It's been this way for quite some time. The economy, immigration, abortion, and immigration. According to the latest New York Times poll, you can see it was the economy at the top. This is nationally, all across the country, at 22%, followed by abortion and immigration. Now, among those three issues, who would do a better job with them? For Donald Trump, he very clearly, and we've seen this for months now, or at least since Kamala Harris has jumped into the race, he leads on economy and immigration. Plus 13 in the Times poll on the economy, plus 10 on immigration. You just heard me asking the chairman of the RNC about abortion. That's because that is the big area where Kamala Harris leads over Donald Trump. Again, New York Times poll, plus 15. But that's a national poll, right? As we've talked about over and over again, in the swing states, the 7 key swing states, that's where this election is going to come down to. And here's what I wanted to show you. In those swing states, this is the Hill Emerson College polling, every single state, no matter what we're seeing nationally, every single state, it is the economy that is the top issue. In Pennsylvania, where the debate is being held tonight, 51% of people in the Keystone State said that was issue number one. The lowest it was in Arizona. 31%, by the way. A close second there was immigration. But we talk about it all the time, quote unquote, it's the economy, stupid, the famous quote. You see that here once again. Something to think about tonight when you are watching the debate. All right, come on in. Mick Mulvaney, former member of Congress, former budget director, former White House chief of staff, NewsNation political contributor. Mick, hello. Happy debate night. Put on your chief of staff hat for me if you can. Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, where do you think both of them go tonight? Start with Trump.
I liked what I just heard from Michael Whatley, who's a longtime friend of mine. They're going to try and focus on her record. And on that line, that bizarre line she kept coming back to during that CNN interview about her values haven't changed. People do care about candidates' values. There's no question about that. But they care more about how those values translate into action. So I think the Trump team is right to sort of say, look, if her values really haven't changed, is she still for decriminalizing illegal immigration? Is she still for reparations for slavery? She's still for all these very far left-leaning things that she's been for in the past. I think that's smart. If I'm on the Harris team, here's what I'm banking on. That this election is no longer about policy, that anybody who's made up their mind on policy has already decided, and that the people who are tuning in tonight to see Kamala Harris for the first time are more interested in her personality. How does she look? How does she sound? How does she make them feel? Does she look like a president? Keep in mind that the New York Times poll from over the weekend said that nearly 30% of those folks who expect to vote said they don't know enough about Kamala Harris yet to have a real firm opinion of her. So that's going to be the things that I am on the Harris team. I'm focusing on that. If I'm Trump, I'm focusing on policies.
Okay. So 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 38 minutes until this starts right now. Donald Trump's about to land in Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris has been in the Keystone State for the last 4 days or so. The team around her, you would know this as a chief of staff, the team around her and the team around him right now, what are they doing in these last 2.5 hours?
Different for different folks. Look, my guess is Kamala Harris is probably a lot more nervous than Donald Trump is. I was trying to do the math in my head. I think, and if Steyerwalt were here, he would be able to help me. So maybe Tranter can sort of kick in. I don't think any human being has done as many presidential debates as Donald Trump has. So he's going to look at this as old hat. And the more you do something, the better you get at it. There's a reason you folks are on TV, that you do what you do. You get better at something the more you practice it. This is Kamala Harris's first presidential debate at this level. Yeah, she's done a primary or two. Yes, she's running California statewide, which is a big deal. And she had the one vice presidential debate before. But my guess is she's more nervous. So they're trying to sort of keep her relaxed. Donald Trump is going to be relaxed. They're going to try and keep him focused. So it's an entirely different sort of prep, probably an entirely different sort of atmosphere in the green rooms as they get ready to go out on the stage.
Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former Trump White House chief of staff. Have fun watching it tonight, Mick. Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
You got it. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. All right. So I ran through some of the numbers there. Tranter, DDHQ has a model out that basically predicts the probability of someone winning. And right now, it's at 55%. The Harris team says she's the underdog. The Trump team says he's winning. The polls show it's basically a point here or there. How do you get to 55% her?
Well, we look at a whole bunch of things, polling inside the states, fundraising, momentum, things like that. And what's markedly different from when Joe Biden was on the ticket is she is slightly ahead in the polling average in some of these key tipping point states. You bring up Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, but she's also made competitive North Carolina and Georgia, two states that were solidly in Trump's column when Joe Biden was on the ticket, and now they're in play now. 55%, though, it's ever so slightly in her favor.
Anyone calling Tranter out on those numbers?
That sounds about right.
About right?
Well, I'd like to season them toward Donald Trump, but I will.
You think we're somewhere?
We'll see if they change after tonight.
You think it's ballpark?
No, I think that's exactly right. And I mean, even if you look in some of these states, particularly when we were talking during the break about Florida, I mean, I think Florida is emblematic of that. I mean, he won Florida in 2016 by 1.3 points in 2020, but now she's down by 2 points in that state. That's kind of remarkable.
All right, still, we'll get into this. Another half hour to go here on the Hill. Donald Trump set to land in Pennsylvania any moment now. We will show you that when it happens. Plus, how is the Harris campaign approaching this evening? We are speaking with one of her top supporters. It is a big night of politics. I got to jump in here to get them all to, get ready for the next 30 minutes or so. There's a lot to talk about. You're watching The Hill. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Live look at Philadelphia, the airport there, where former President Trump set to touch down any moment now in the city of brotherly love ahead of tonight's debate against Vice President Harris. We are nearly 2.5 hours away until the two face off in what is likely to be a landmark event. Now, it will also be the first time the two presidential contenders will meet each other. Ahead of tonight, President Biden says he spoke with his vice president. President Biden speaking a little while ago.
I'm going up to my granddaughter's birthday in New York. Then we're going to watch the debate. I spoke to the vice president. She seems calm, cool, collected. I think she's going to do great. And I'm not going to tell you what advice I gave.
All right, over now to the spin room that is inside the Philadelphia Convention Center. Our Kelly Meyer has been there throughout the day. Kelly, final preparations getting underway. We know Donald Trump is about to land in Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris has been there for a handful of days. You just spoke with Governor Kristi Noem, I hear. What'd she tell you?
Yeah, so we are in the spin room right now. This is where folks come after the debate, but people are already spinning as we ran into South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem and asked her about what she had to say to the former president ahead of this debate and just how he's going to do tonight, what she expects to see on that stage. Here's a little bit about what she had to say.
But eventually, as she goes on and the questions go forward, she'll fall back into what she truly believes.
Have you spoken to the former president recently?
I do speak to him quite often. Yeah, he's doing good.
Did you have any advice for him tonight?
No, I don't give President Trump advice on debates. He's done more than, I've done more, but he's done these presidential debates more than anybody I've known before. So I just think she's going to play the woman card. She's going to try to act like a victim. And she's going to try to act like he's being inappropriate, and he just needs to be strong and factual and not let her do that. She needs to go out there. If she wants the biggest job in the world, then she better go out and act like it and be ready to answer the questions.
So, Blake, how Republicans I've been talking to are looking at this as if Harris has more at stake here tonight. And you can see there's folks coming in. Hey, Senator Scott. Try to get him to come over. Rick Scott's just walking by in the spin room here, Blake. So, they're kind of framing this as Harris has more at stake here tonight on stage because Trump is going to try to hold her accountable for what he says are the failures. Senator Scott, how are you? It's good to see you.
Nice seeing you.
Nice seeing you. We're live on the Hill with Blake Berman. Can I ask you a quick question? Do you have any advice for former President Trump?
Let Harris talk. She's the one who has the pressure tonight. We all know about Donald Trump. We know he had a great economy. We know he secured the border, and we know that we weren't at war. So she's got to prove a lot because the Democrats rejected Biden. Even the Democrats rejected Biden. Okay, well, she's Biden. Okay, she was the border czar. All right, the border is wide open. She was the one who was the tiebreaker vote for the massive spending bills that caused inflation. So she said she was the last person. Something today was really heartbreaking. We had the 13 members that died service members that died in Afghanistan. We gave them the Congressional Gold Medal. And so she said she was the last person standing in the room. Well, that was a horrible decision that even the military told them not to do.
And you also have your own race in Florida coming up as well. How do you think Trump is going to fare in Florida and yourself?
He's going to do really well. We're going to do really well because people are fed up with the Biden administration. They're fed up with Biden and Harris. They don't want socialism. My opponent's a complete socialist. Harris is a complete socialist. I mean, she wants price controls. I mean, if she wants to try to see how this is going, we know a lot of people in Florida from Venezuela. They've watched price controls in Venezuela. It's a disaster for their economy.
Blake, you got any questions for Senator Rick Scott here?
I have lots of questions for the senator. I heard him say hi. I've covered him for 15 years. Just tell him I say hello, and we'll have him back on the Hill again soon. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Blake. He says hello, and I'll have him on the show soon.
Hi, Blake.
All right. Kelly Meyer, live for us in Philadelphia. Kelly, thank you, and we'll take the senator up on that. All right, joining us live now from just down the road, the Colorado Democratic Congressman Jason Crow. Congressman Crow, you heard a lot there between Kristi Noem and Senator Rick Scott. I'll let you respond. What'd you make of it, and what are you expecting tonight?
Yeah, Blake, good to be joining you. Listen, this stuff is just not true. Right? She was never the border czar. What she did do is she actually led private sector investment in a thing called the Partnership for Central America that actually ended up reducing immigration from the Northern Triangle, that's El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, by 50%. Right? And she actually was very, very strong on the record of saying we need to win, or we need to end our nation's longest war. Right? Listen, I fought 2 tours in Afghanistan. After 20 years, $2 trillion spent, over 2,400 service members killed, 20,000 wounded. It was very clear we were never going to win that war. And sitting here today, there are no servicemen fighting and dying in Afghanistan, and the American taxpayers are not paying billions of dollars a month. That was a hard decision to make. It was the right decision to make. There's a lot of things to talk about with Senator Scott there. No to socialism, no to price controls. This stuff is just not true.
All right, let me bring you back to Kamala Harris here, and I would just note as it relates to the border. There were nearly 6.3 million encounters along the southwest border from when the Biden-Harris administration started to when the Senate negotiations began. But I want to get to more with you here. What about this idea? Because, Congressman, I'm told that the word of the night for Kamala Harris is going to be future, that she wants to talk about the future. After all, she is the sitting vice president. And I wonder what the risk is that she runs talking about the future when just about every American in this country knows she's been in the West Wing for the last 3.5 years.
Well, first of all, Blake, just to correct the record here, border crossings are going down. They continue to go down. And it was Donald Trump.
They have gone down. They have gone down.
Who actually...
They have gone down in the last 2 months, correct. And I'm just pointing out what happened in 3.5 years before the negotiations happened.
And it was Donald Trump who blew up the bipartisan border deal. We negotiated very, very hard to get a once-in-a-decade deal to actually help secure the border, get additional resources. This is about money and resources. The president cannot create money and allocate funding. Congress has to do that. We had a bipartisan border deal. It was Donald Trump that picked up the phone and said, no, we're blowing up this deal. We're going to blow this deal up because I would rather campaign on this. So he owns that. He owns that, and those that did his bidding to blow up that deal own it.
He did.
Let's
so
also
he
be
did,
clear.
Congressman. You are right. Sorry, we have a little delay here. I don't mean to jump in on you. You are right. He did come out and he said no to that Senate deal, and it was done from that point out. And as I note, border crossings were what they were before the negotiations started. But let me show you, this is just polling, New York Times polling. How much is Kamala Harris to be blamed for? This is not what you think, what I think the panelist thinks, or anyone. This is polling. Problems at the border, 63% she is to blame. Rising prices, 54%. You mentioned Afghanistan, 49%. If the American public, Congressman, is saying that she is to blame for these issues, again, I go back to my initial question. How does she stand up there tonight and make the case that she's actually the one to lead us into the future?
Well, folks can find polling that say all manner of things. What I actually do is listen to voters. I listen to voters in Colorado. I listen to voters around the country, and people are excited about Kamala Harris. They're excited about her candidacy, and they're excited about her leadership because, as you just mentioned, this is about the future. Right? This is about whether or not we're going to unite as a country or we're going to go with Donald Trump who wants to divide us. This is about whether or not we're going to focus on the middle class, on unions, on working folks. You know, I grew up working in construction to put my way through college. I know what it's like to work on a construction site. I served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Kamala Harris is the one who believes in service above self. She hasn't called veterans suckers and losers like Donald Trump has. She won't privatize the VA like Donald Trump has proposed to do. And she's not going to give tax breaks to billionaires like Donald Trump did when he was president. In fact, she proposes to give tax breaks to people earning less than $400,000, to middle-class Americans. You know, if we invest in infrastructure in this country and we invest in people, we never regret it. And that is the Kamala Harris approach.
Congressman Jason Crow, Democrat from Colorado. I could talk to you all afternoon, but there is lots to get to on this evening with 2 hours and 20 minutes until debate night. We thank you for joining us. Appreciate it, Congressman.
Thanks, Blake.
You got it. Live pictures, by the way, just down the road from where the congressman is, from where the debate is tonight, the spin room as well. You just saw Donald Trump's plane land. Trump just arriving there really 2 hours and 20 minutes before the debate. The vice president has been there for a handful of days. Donald Trump just flying in, and the country will get to see him and Kamala Harris in a couple hours' time. On the other side of the break, a former cabinet member in the Trump administration joins us. So what does he make about some of his old colleagues saying, you know what, not for me? We're talking to him on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
NewsNation tonight. It's debate night with Chris Cuomo, Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Donald Trump on the ABC News simulcast. Live coverage starts at 7, 6 Central on the only network with respect for all Americans. It's debate night with Chris Cuomo, NewsNation tonight.
From the first and possibly only debate between the Vice President, Kamala Harris, the 45th President, Donald Trump. You see there Donald Trump's plane in Philadelphia landed just moments ago. Now, leading up to the big debate, the Vice President's campaign has unveiled a new attack ad highlighting some of Trump's former allies, some of his former top officials, cabinet members even, that have since turned on him. Watch.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States.
All right, so that ad goes on to mention, for example, Mark Esper, John Bolton, Mark Milley. Joining us now is another one of Donald Trump's former cabinet members, Congressman Ryan Zinke. He was the Secretary of the Interior in the Trump administration, Congressman as well. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you.
Here on the Hill.
I stand on the other side.
Yeah, so tell me, so when you see that, I wonder what goes through your mind, because they're not the only ones who have come out.
No, and look, I grew up in Montana, and my experience growing up was a lot different than President Trump. I'm Mr. Outdoors, and as Secretary of Interior, I can tell you, he gave me a lot of latitude, and as a boss, we got things done. And it's interesting on the debate tonight. You look at Harris is probably going to talk about the future because she can't talk about her past. Waltz can't talk about being from Minneapolis. She can't talk about being from San Francisco. She can't talk about, being the home of sanctuary cities.
Right.
But President Trump is going to talk about what he did in the past and what he's going to do in the future. That's a big difference.
What would you say to folks out there who say it's not 1, it's not 2, it's not 3? Yeah, and if they were working alongside him or with him like you were, and they're saying not now, shouldn't they have concerns?
Well, the 2 biggest successes I had with President Trump was, look, we passed the Great American Outdoors Act. If you're an environmentalist and a conservationist, the largest investment in the history of our country on our forests and national parks. And energy became from being vulnerable and beholden to others to being energy dominant in 2 years. So if a president can make that amount of effort and that amount of progress forward in 2 years, you look where we are now and where we were, I think Trump has the edge.
I know you got a race that you're running, but if he asked you to be in the cabinet again, if he wins, would you take him up on that?
I think the best thing for me is you go where you're needed most and you're most effective. And I sit on appropriations. Okay. I sit in Congress. Congress. We need to actually in Congress. We need to do our job and get our job done.
So you mentioned appropriations. The Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan, came out today and said that in the first 11 months of this year, this country ran a deficit of $1.9 trillion with a T.
With a T.
With a T. In the last month alone, something like $381 billion. Donald Trump, in his first fiscal year, deficit was $780 billion. Nearly $1 trillion in his second, over $1 trillion before COVID started. This is a Democratic problem. This is a Republican problem. And when you see that number, I wonder how anyone is going to change it.
All right. Constitution, Article 1, Section 9. No money should be removed from the Treasury unless by consequence by Congress, by law. We have to go back to the basics, in my opinion. The way Congress is supposed to work for American citizens is this. You're supposed to authorize bills. Then you're supposed to have a budget that tells you how much money you have. And then you're supposed to have appropriations that then spends the amount of money you have. We have been upside down. Congress has invented these mandatory, discretionary conveniences not to do their job. We need to make the hard decisions and do our job.
But if they've been upside down with Democrats and upside down with Republicans, what's the hope? Or is there none?
We're a great country. I haven't seen a problem that's not fixable.
But it's a math problem, right?
There is a math problem because you know how we got here? We weren't paying attention. So all of us have to do our duty and pay attention. We're a great country, but you can't continue to punt the ball and ignore these large issues. We're America. We need to face them, and if we do, they're attainable. I can tell you what, we got to go back to, guess what? This is how much money we have. These are our priorities, and spend the money on the priorities.
I'm sure this isn't the first time this has happened to you, but I got to stop you here because Donald Trump is about to walk off.
Not the first time. It probably won't be the last, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So live look right now, Philadelphia, Donald Trump pulling in there in about 2 hours and 10 minutes. He will be up on the debate stage with Kamala Harris. Let's keep these pictures up here. As I head back to the desk and the panel, and thank you to Congressman Zinke for being with us here in studio. What are you all expecting tonight? Let's start with the man who we're looking at right now. What are you expecting tonight, Nan, with Donald J. Trump?
Well, I'm expecting him to feel confident, and I think he should. He definitely has the arguments on his side, and I'm sure he's a very intelligent man. He definitely wants to win. He's had a lot of great advice from people who care about him saying, Mr. President, if you stick to your policies, stick to your record, you're going to do great. And I think he's capable of that.
Kamala Harris, you expect what?
I think that snippet of that ad that you played leading into that segment with Congressman Zinke is a preview of what you're going to hear her say tonight on that stage, which is the people who know you best, the people who served under you, 10 retired U.S. military officials have said, you're dangerous, you're not fit to serve. The people, the best that you hired, want nothing to do with you.
All right, as we watch Trump walk off, I've been told, Julia, as I started the show, I'll say it again here, that he's basically going to make the argument to Kamala Harris, well, if you couldn't do it over the last 3 years, why do you think you could do it now? And he's going to point back even to some of her court cases back as a prosecutor.
Right, definitely. And I mean, that's certainly could be effective given that Republicans have put so much stock in the issue of crime. But at the same time, you have Kamala Harris really leaning into her record as a prosecutor to push back against this picture that's been painted of Democrats by Republicans that they're weak on crime. But, for Kamala Harris, I think this is a major opportunity for tonight. She's obviously the vice president. We know who she is, but we don't really know the details, or the average American voter doesn't know the details. This is her opportunity to give the details, not only about herself, but about policy. That's something she's faced some pushback for, not being detailed enough.
DDHQ, the man behind the numbers, you're watching what?
I'm watching probably the most watched debate this cycle, and the last opportunity either candidate can have to have a couple-point difference in a 50-50 race.
50-50 race it is right now. Donald Trump live in Philadelphia, heading down the stairs. Again, Kamala Harris has been in PA for days. Donald Trump getting there, not quite at the last minute, literally, but I guess almost metaphorically, you could say. Our coverage here on NewsNation and on the Hill continues on the other side of the break. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, joins me live. Leland in the middle of it all in Pennsylvania tonight in the spin room. It's an unusual place to be, the spin room. Explain where you are real quick. I know where you are, but for the audience.
All right, so the way this works, and it's different than any presidential debate really in history. We are in a convention center, huge room. Normally you'd have the American Widget Society behind us. But instead, you've got every major news organization, and then you have the surrogates. So Governor Doug Burgum, Governor Kristi Noem, for example, from Team Trump. And then you've got Joe Biden's top surrogates, including Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania. And they wander around from interview to interview to interview, and that is the spin. So they pre-spin, which is what's going on right now for the pregame, and then they come back for the postgame. Right. And Blake, I think what's different, and you've covered so many of these as well, what's different in this is the level of interest, the level of intensity, and the stakes, because there is the thought that this is going to be the one and only.
You've had your reporting today as well. I laid out some of it here on the show as well, which is how these candidates and how these campaigns plan to attack tonight. And then I always think of the famous Mike Tyson quote, which is along the lines of everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth or something like that. And that's kind of, the lay of the land, I guess, leading into this.